Begin today the Gemara on Daf Gimel Amud Beis, 4 lines up from the bottom of the Amud, where it says, V'omar Rav Yehuda, Omar Rav. The Gemara here brings the subject. It's not related to what was spoken about before, this Perek that speaks about Edom Zaymimin, but because it brought before a statement from Rav Yehuda Omar Rav, and Rav Kahana is the one that questioned what he said. So it brings another statement from Rav Yehuda Omar Rav that Rav Kahana had a question on this. So the Gemara, V'omar Rav Yehuda Omar Rav, Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Shloishes lugin mayim, 3 lugim of water. Okay, so what we're talking about here, before we see the words of the Gemara inside, as you know, a mikveh has to be rainwater. And when a mikveh is rainwater, and the full amount that a mikveh has to be, which is 40 sa'ah, if any mayim she'uvim, which is drawn water, not rainwater, falls into it, or let's say tap water is poured into it, so then it's not going to be passeling the mikveh, because once it's already a kosher mikveh of rainwater, so then, like we know, we have the mikvehs today that we tevel in are not rainwater, but there's the other bar that has the rainwater, and there's a hashaka, and then they touch the rainwater with the tap water or the sink water, and it makes it a kosher mikveh. So if it's a mikveh of 40 saw, whatever falls into it is not pasel. Here, though, we're talking about a mikveh that doesn't have the full 40 saw yet. And now there's 3 lugim of mayim she'uvim that falls into this mikveh. So in this case, Chazal made a takana that 3 lugim of mayim she'uvim passes this mikveh. So now Rav said regarding this halacha, shloishes lugim mayim, these 3 lugim of drawn water, shenafal letoichan kortiv shel yain. A little bit, a kortiv is a small amount, a little bit of wine fell into this drawn water. Umarein kamare yain, and now it doesn't look like water anymore. It looks like wine. V'naflu lemikveh, and now these 3 lugin of drawn water falls into the mikveh. Lo pasluhu, it will not passel the mikveh. This takon of Chazal that it passels the mikveh is only if it's actually water. But if it's wine, and in this case, because it looks like wine, it's not considered to be water anymore, we consider it to be wine, therefore it will not passel the mikveh. Maskef lo Rav Kahana, so Rav Kahana asks on this, V'chima ben zeh lemei tseva. What's the difference between this and the case of water that has a little bit of wine in it that makes it, changes the color, to the water of dye? Meaning the water that was used to have the agents of the dye that were soaked in it, and therefore it now also changes colors. Now the Tanan, in the Mishnah it says, Rabbi Yossi says, Mei tzeva, this dye water, Paislin is a mikveh b'shloishes lugin. That if you have this amount of 3 lugin of this water, and its color, it's changed. Now, because of the agents that were soaked in it, it has a different color, and it's this amount of 3 lug, that takon of Chazal, that it would passel the mikveh, still applies, even though it has a different color. So the color doesn't really matter. So Rav Kahana is asking the same should be with the wine, that a little bit of wine, tiny little bit of wine that fell into the water, and it's enough to color it a different color, but it's just a little bit that changed the color, but really it still is 3 lugin of water, and therefore it should passel the mikveh. Amalei Rave, so Rave answers, it's not the same thing. Hasam Mayed Tzava Mikri. By that dye water, people still refer to it as water. Yeah, it's water, dye water, but it's still water. Hacha Chamra Meziga Mikri. However, here, once a little bit of wine falls into it and it has the color of wine, so it looks like, and people refer to it as diluted wine. And therefore, it's not going to have the halacha of water, the mayim she'uvim, that passels the mikveh. Right, so as it's explained in some Rishonim, I think the Ritva here says that be'emes, even regarding the water, once it has already a different color, the color is what matters. That's the point that Rav is saying here, that if it doesn't have the color of water, that takon of Chazal should not apply, and it will not passel the mikveh. We're only talking about psul, a takon of Chazal, and that takana does not apply. They did not apply it if it does not have the color of water, and you go after the color. However, since it still has the name water, Maya Detzave, so therefore, in order for people not to confuse, they applied their takana that it will passel the mikveh in this case as well. Okay, but not.
Yes.
Huh?
So why is it?
By wine, people don't refer to it as water that has wine in it. People refer to it because it has the color of wine, so it's referred to as yayin mozuk, like diluted wine. But by Maya Detzava, it's referred to as water. That's the way people call it. So therefore, the takon of Chazal will still apply here. But the Gemara asks on this, But Rab Chia, he taught about this exact same halacha that Rav is speaking about. This water, 3 lugan of water, that a little bit of wine fell into it and it changed its color. And Rab Chia said, Hayridu es a mikveh. It takes the mikveh down from its from being a good mikveh. It invalidates the mikveh. So he clearly says, not like Rav. Omar Rave, so Rave says, Lo kashya. There's no question on Rav from what Rab Chia said. Ha Rab Yechanan ben Nuri, Rav is following the opinion of Rab Yechanan ben Nuri, and Ha Rabbanan. And Rab Chia is following the opinion of the Rabbanan. And the Gemara here brings a Mishnah, Masechta Makos, that there's actually a machlokes about this. The Tanan, the Mishnah says, Shloishes lugim ayin, when you have 3 lugim of water, that's the amount that Chazal made the Zayde, that a 3 lugim of water of mayim shuvin, it passes the mikveh. So now this Mishnah speaks about a case of these 3 lugim of water. However, chasa kortev, it's not 3 full lug. It's missing a little bit. Okay, so that's different than the case Rav spoke about. Here, these 3 lugin of water is missing a little bit of that amount. Now, shenafal ateichon kortev yayin. Now, what completes that it should be 3 lugin? A little bit of wine fell into this water. So, and now marei and kamare yayin, and it looks like wine. It doesn't look like water. So over here, you don't have 3 full lug of water in the first place, where Chazal made their takana that it would pass the mikveh. And its color also does not even look like water. It looks like wine. And then the naflu mikveh, this falls into the mikveh, loy pasluhu. It will not pass the mikveh. Now, v'chein, similar, the Mishnah says, gimel lugin mayin, 3 lugin of water, chasa kortev, that's missing. It's not the full 3 lug, it's missing a little bit. Shenafal ateichon kortev chalav, a little bit of milk falls into this water. Umarei and kamara mayin, the milk doesn't have that strong color like wine, and that little bit of milk that falls into the water, it still looks like water. V'naflu mikveh, and it falls into the mikveh, loy pasluhu, it doesn't pasl it either, even though it looks like water. So over here, as you see, according to the Tanakama, the reason why in both of these cases it's not going to pasl the mikveh is because it wasn't full 3 lug of water. It was missing a little bit from that amount that Chazal say that it pasls. So what do we understand from what the Tanakama here is saying? If it would have been 3 full lugin of water, and then wine fell into it, or milk fell into it, even though the color changed, it would passel the mikveh. Right? So this is the source of what Rab Chia said, that it would passel the mikveh. Now, however, Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri argues, and he says, no, we always follow the color, which means even if it was 3 full lug of water, but and now wine fell into it and the color changed, it's because it has a different color of wine, it's not going to pass the mikveh, even though it was 3 full lug of water over here. So not like the Tanakama, that the reason it doesn't pass the mikveh is because it wasn't that full amount that Chazal, the 3 full lug that passed the mikveh. Now Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri says you always follow the color. If it's a color of water, so then it passes the mikveh. If it's not, it will not pass the mikveh. So Rav, that said that the wine that changed the color will not pass the mikveh, is following what Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri said. Okay, so now you have over here 2 cases in this Mishnah. The Mishnah spoke about the case of a little bit of wine that fell inside the water, where it changes the color, and the case of the milk that falls inside the water and it does not change the color. So really, according to what the Gemara is saying now, the Mishnah could have mentioned both wine and milk together, because the point is that in both of these cases, whether it changed the color, whether it did not change the color, according to the Tanakama, because it wasn't 3 full lug of water, it's not going to passel the mikveh. But the Gemara separates them, because by the yayin, it changes the color. By the chalav, by the milk, it does not change the color. So therefore, it's saying it separately. Okay, but now this is the pshat, and the way, the girsa we have in the Mishnah, that makes the point that Rav is following Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri's opinion, and Rab Chia is following the Tanakama's opinion. But the Gemara asks on this, is this actually the way to learn this Mishnah? There's a shaila about this. Rav Papa, when he was discussing this subject, he actually had a shaila about this. The boy, Rav Papa's shaila was, so again, Rav said this halacha, that the 3 lugin of water, that some wine fell into it and the color changed, it will not pass the mikveh. So Rav Papa had a shaila, do we have to say that Rav's opinion is only according to Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri, as the Gemara just explained, or maybe there's another version, how to learn the words of this Mishnah, and therefore what Rav said will fit even with the Tanakama. So what was Rav Papa's ibaya? Rav Tani Chaser Kortev Bereisha. Did Rav learn this Mishnah And in the first case, where it mentioned about the wine, a little bit of wine that fell into the water, was the case like we had it, like we read it before, that the water was missing a little bit? Okay, aval shloishes lugin that is. But if it would be full 3 lugin of water, letanakama pasli. So then, according to the Tanakama, it would passel the mikveh, even though the color is not anymore from water. And if that's the case, Rav cannot go according to the Tanakama. Rav's opinion that we follow the color, that if it's wine, it has a color of wine, then it will not passel the mikveh, must be only according to Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri. And va'asar Rabbi Yechanan l'meima, and Rabbi Yechanan in the Mishnah argues and says, that no, we always follow the color. And if the color now is from wine, it's going to passel the mikveh. That's the pshat that we said before, and like the Gemara said, V'Rav the Omar, the Bach says, V'Rav the Omar Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri. So then Rav's opinion will be only like Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri that says that you follow the color. According to the Tanakama, it's not, you don't follow only the color. According to the Tanakama, if it's 3 full lugan of water, even if it has a color of wine, it will passel the mikveh. That's one way, one version of how to learn this Mishnah. But another way how to learn this Mishnah is Rav loy toni chasa kurtav bereisha. In the first case of this Mishnah, where it says that there was wine that fell into the water, the case actually is that it was 3 full lugin of water, and wine fell into it, and the Tanakama is saying it's not going to passel the mikveh. In other words, according to this version, what the Tanakama is saying is, in order for these 3 lugin to passel the mikveh, you have to have both conditions. It has to be 3 full lugin of water, and it has to have the color of water. And that fits with what Rav said. And then Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri, ki polig, aseifu the polig. Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri is actually arguing on the next case of this Mishnah. In the next case of the Mishnah, where it talks about the milk that fell into the water, there it's talking about the 3 lugin of water that was missing a kortiv, it was missing a little bit, and then the milk fell inside, and now it completed it to the amount of 3 lug, and it looks like water, but according to the Tanakama, it won't passel the mikveh, even though it looks like water, but it's not full 3 lugin of water. It's missing a little bit of water, because again, the point, according to the Tanakama, is in order for this to passel the mikveh, you need 2 things. It has to be 3 full lugin of water, and it has to also look like water. So that's the 2 cases in the Mishnah. The first case is where it's actually 3 full lugin of water, but it looks like wine. It doesn't passel the mikveh. The next case is where it looks like water, but it's not 3 full lugin of water. It's missing a little bit of water. That's the Tanakama. And then on this, Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri argues that Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri ki polig aseifu the polig. Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri is only arguing on the second case, and Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri says you always follow the color. This condition, that in order for this water to passel the mikveh, it has to be 3 full lug of water. No, he doesn't hold to this. Even if it's missing a little bit of that amount of 3 lug, and you added some milk, and now it is the full amount of 3 lug plus the milk, and it looks like water, as long as it looks like water, it's going to passel the mikveh, even if it's missing a little bit of that amount of the water. That's what Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri comes to add. And now, according to this, so Rav that says, regarding the case of the 3 lug of water, that a little bit of wine fell inside, and now it looks like wine, and therefore Rav said it won't passel the mikveh, that will fit both with the Tanakama and Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri. It's not necessary to say that Rav is only following the opinion of Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri. So why are we saying here that Rav is only Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri's opinion? So the Gemara says, Rav Papa mi boyale. Yeah, Rav Papa taka had an iboya how to learn the pshat in this Mishnah. But Rava pshitale, Rava did not have any iboya. Rava had the girsa like we originally had it, that even in the Reisha of the Mishnah, when it speaks about the wine, you guide is there chaser kurtiv, that the reason why it doesn't passel the mikveh is because it doesn't have the full 3 lug of water. But if it would have the full 3 lug of water, even if it now looks like wine, it would passel the mikveh. Not like Rav's opinion. And that's why the Gemara before said that Rav goes according to Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri. Now, Amar Rav Yosef, regarding this halacha of Rav and the source here from this Mishnah, Rav Yosef said, Lo shmieli ha shmaita. I did not hear this halacha that Rav said. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye says to Rav Yosef, but at Amris la ne'elam. You're the one that actually taught this halacha to us. And v'hachi Amris ne'elam, this is what you told us. The Rav loy tani chasa kurtev bereisha. Rav was not guided in the Mishnah, chaser kurtev, like the Gemara originally said, that the Tanakama holds that only if it's chaser kurtev, therefore it will not passel the mikveh. And therefore, Rabbi Yochanan Aseifa Polik, as the Gemara before explained, Rabbi Yochanan is not arguing on the first case of the Mishnah. He's arguing only on the second case of the Mishnah, where there's the milk that's being added to this water, and now it all looks like water, even though it's not the full amount of 3 lugan of water. Rabbi Yochanan is only arguing on that case. And therefore, as the Gemara concluded before, according to this understanding, what Rav says, that if it doesn't have the color of water, it will not pass the mikveh. It fits according to the Tanakama's opinion and Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. So Abai is telling Rav Yosef, you yourself taught us this halacha and explained to us the source of Rav's opinion in the Mishnah and how you learn the version in the Mishnah that it goes according to everybody's opinion. So what happened over here? How did Rav Yosef forget this? The Rashi here brings, you have this a few times in Shas, that Rav Yosef became very ill and he forgot the Torah that he learned. And therefore you find in the Gemara a few times that Abai comes and reminds Rav Yosef the Torah that Rav Yosef himself taught them. Okay, interesting that the Gemara brings this here, this inyan. I mean, really doesn't add any actual halacha to this inyan. It just is making the point that Rav Yosef forgot and Abai reminded him. Okay, so this is the conclusion of this halacha, the source of Rav's opinion, that the 3 lugan of Mayim She'uvim that pass a mikveh, and that this is only if it has the color of water. If it has the color of wine, it does not pass the mikveh. And the 2 versions of how to understand where the source of what Rav said in the Mishnah. Is it only according to Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, or is it even according to the Tanakama? Another halacha, which is also related to a mikveh, Va'amar Rav Yudah Marav, Chavis Melei Mayim, a barrel full of water. And this is obviously drawn water. And that's puzzle to Toivelin. Shanafla leyama gadol. So this drawn water now falls and gets spilled into the Yama Gadol, the Mediterranean Sea, for example, and it's into the Yam. Hatoivel sham, a person that is going to toivel right in that area where this barrel of water fell in, lo yolsa lo tefillah. The tefillah will not be good. Why? Because it's possible that those 3 lugan of water that fell into that area are all in one place, and therefore when he was toivel, so most of his body was toivel not in the water of the sea. It was toivel. He was toivel in this drawn water, and therefore the tefillah will not be good. Now the Gemara clarifies, this is only when it falls into the Mediterranean Sea, where over here the water could stay put in its place for a certain while. And when the person tevels there right away, it's possible that he teveled only in this drawn water. The kaiva kaima, it stays in its place. But any river where the water is flowing and rushing, soloi, in such a case, it doesn't apply. Tanya nami hachi, we learned the same halacha in Abraisa as well. Chavis meleya yayin, a barrel that was full of wine. So here the example of the Braisa is wine. Shenaflu Yama Gadol, that fell into the Yama Gadol. Hatayvel Sham, when that table is there, also late tefillah. The tefillah does not take effect. Because we're concerned that it's these 3 lugan of the drawn water or wine that's in one place that the person is tabling in, and he's not tabling in the Yama Gadol, which would be good for a tefillah. Okay, before we go weiter, just to mention that in our Gemara, the way Rav Yehuda Marav said the halacha, it was a barrel of drawn water that fell into the mikveh. But Tosfos and the Rishonim have a problem with this gerus in the Gemara, because as I mentioned in the beginning, the halacha by a mikveh is when you have a kosher mikveh and then you pour drawn water into it, it doesn't passel the mikveh. That drawn water, when it touches the kosher mikveh, hashaka, it becomes part of the mikveh and it's all kosher. So what would be the problem if you tevel in this area where there's this drawn water from this barrel? So therefore, Tosfos says that even in Rav, you have to be goyres, like it says in the Braisa, that it's a chavis that was full of wine. Wine does not become kasher when it goes into the mikveh. That's only by mayim she'uvin. That's how Rashi, Tosfos that is goyres. But Rashi is goyres water, and the Pnei Yeshua says an interesting chiddush that even if this drawn water that becomes part of the mikveh won't passel the mikveh, you can tevel in this mikveh, but at the same time though, if the drawn water is in one place and most of your body will be in that drawn water, it will passel you. It will make the person tummy, and he will not be tired. So the Pnei Yeshua argues that you could say that both are true at the same time. It doesn't passel the mikveh, but yet the gzeira of Chazal, that when a person's body is primarily in this drawn water, it will still make him tummy. The tefillah will not be a good tefillah. That's the pshat that the Pnei Yeshua says. Okay, now this Mishnah here, or this Braisa that we're quoting, goes on to say regarding this case where the barrel of wine fell into the Yama Gadol, and if one tevels there, it's Mayim She'uvin, and therefore Chashina, it's possible that it's Mayim She'uvin, and it will not be a good tefillah. Now, v'chein, so too, Kika Shal Truma Shenafal Sham. After this person teveled there, this Tomei person that teveled there, and he will not become Tahir, because we say maybe he teveled in this Mayim She'uvin or this wine. So now after this, a kikar, a bread of Truma fell into that area, Tomei. This bread will now become Tomei, because that area is Tomei from the person that was Tomei that teveled there, and perhaps he didn't tevel properly in the Yama Gadol, but rather he teveled just in this wine that was in that area, and it became Tomei, and now it makes the bread that falls into that area Tomei. So now the Gemara asks on this last addition here, Mai v'chein, what is being added by this? It's obvious, based on what it said before, that if the person tevels there, we're concerned that he teveled in that area, he doesn't become tahir, adrabah, he's tomei, he makes that area tomei, so the bread would become tomei. What is the chiddush here? Says the Gemara, ma'od the because I would think to say, Hossam, when we say that a person that tevels in this area where the barrel of wine or water fell into this yama gadol, that he's going to remain tomei, why are we being machmir about this? Why wouldn't we just say that, no, it got mixed in and therefore the person teveled okay? Why are we so machmir? The reason is because Hasam Oike Gavra Cheske, because we place the person which has a Cheskas Tumah. He has a status of Tumah before he goes into the mikveh. In order to remove that status of Tumah, we have to be absolutely sure that there's no suffix here that he went into the Mayim She'uvim. That's why we're machmir. But Hacha over here, when it comes to this bread of Trumah that fell into this area, Oike Trumah Cheska. Over here, this is a tahir truma bread. It's a good truma bread. When it falls into this area, I would say that there's a doubt, maybe the person was tevel there and made it tummy, but maybe not. So I would place the bread on its chazakeh, and the suffix will not be enough to make it tummy. Kamash Malan, therefore the Mishnah, the Braisa goes on to say, v'chein, that we are concerned and we still will be metame this bread that fell into that area. And the reason is, apparently from what the Gemara is saying here, even though this is only a chashash, this is only a suffix, but Chazal, should be considered to be like a vadei tumah. And if it's like a vadei tumah, then the chazakah of the tara, of the bread of the truma will not help, because it's like a vadei tumah, which will make this bread tummy. Okay, the next Mishnah, going back to the halachis of Eidim Zayimim. Sabteilige Mishnah, Me'idin on a bish pleini. Eidim come and testify about an individual, Shachayev l'chaverim masayim zuz, that this person owes someone 200 zuz. V'nimtzu zayim, and they're found to be Eidim Zayimim, and they said false testimony. Says the Rab Meir here, the Tanakam Rab Meir, loikin. So number one, for saying the false testimony, they get malchus. This is the malchus of Leisana that the Gemara brought before on Daf Beis. Leisana b'reyacha eit shoker. Even though it's a lav she'ein by maisa, there's no action that's being done, it's just words. But the Gemara before brought the pasuk of itztikus atzadik v'shius harasha, that in this case you do get malchus for this. And umishalmen. And you also have to pay the einish of kashas amam. They intended to have cause this person this loss to pay. That einish goes on them, that they have to pay that to him. And he explains, how do you give two punishments at the same time to this person for what he did? Because Shaloi Hashem HaMevi on L'dei Makis, Mevi on L'dei Tashlumin. It's not the same pasuk, which is the source for the Malchus that you get. That's the source. There's a different pasuk, which is the source for this, that you have to pay the einish of Kashazama. So therefore, it's not a problem to give both punishments at the same time. It's two different psukim, two different sources. Divrei Rab Meir, this is Rab Meir's opinion. The Chachamim say, if you're paying the einish of kashazamim, in this case you intended to have him pay 200 zuz, and now the Eidim Zayimim have to pay, there's no malchus. Even though there's the pasuk of Leisana, but according to the Chachamim, that only applies in a case where you can't fulfill the kashazamim, like the first Mishnah in the Masechta. There you give the malchus. But if there is the kashazamim, like in this case, they pay the money, there's no malchus. Another case, a similar argument, Eidim came and testified that someone did an Aveda that he's chayav for it Malchus. Now, they're found to be false Eidim. So now these Eidim Zayimim, Loik and Shmainim, they get Malchus twice. One is Mishum Leisana B'Reyacha Eid Shoker. The fact that they said false testimony, there is a lav that you get Malchus for this. And also, Umishum Vasisim Loik Kashazama. And also then the fact that they intended to have this person get Malchus, that goes on them, that they get that same punishment as a second malchus of kashazama. Divrei Rab Meir. And again, it's two different psukim, two different sources, so they get both twice malchus. However, Chachamim say, no, ein loikin ella arbayim. That since he's already getting malchus once for the kashazamam, you only get once malchus and you don't give him the einish of leisana. That's only in a case where you can't do the kashazamam, then you give malchus, but not in this case. Talk to Gemara, Bishleim Rabbanan. It's well understood what's the source of the Rabbanan's opinion that you can't give the two punishments. Like in the case of the Reisha of the Mishnah, you can't give Malkus and payment to the Edom Zayman. Why? What's the source? Kedei Rish Asay Ksiv. In the pasuk where it speaks about the punishment by Malkus, so it says Kedei Rish Asay, you give him for his wickedness, but it uses a singular term, Rish Asay, which means Risha Achas, Atamachayva, Viatamachayva, Mishlam Shtei Rishiyais, that you give him one punishment for the fact that he did something which is a Rasha, but that's only one. But you can't give him two different punishments at the same time. So therefore we give him Malkus and not, or actually in this case, we give him the Einish of Kashazamam, that is. He has to pay, and once he's paying, it's the Einish of Kashazamam, so the Malkus of Leisana does not apply over here. That's the source according to the Rabbanon. El Rab Meir, however, according to Rab Meir, my time, what is his source? Doesn't he learn out from Kedei Rishasai, this drasha, that you would have to give only one punishment, in this case to pay, and not Malkus? Again?
Is one of them Knas, another them
Oh, the Gemara is soon going to talk about Knas. Let's see. So the Gemara says, Omar Ula. So Ula answers, no, actually, according to Rab Meir, there's a source from another place that you could give two punishments. Gamar mimaitzi shemra. He learns it out from what we find by a maitzi shemra, which is a person that got married, and he comes and claims that his wife was not a basula, she was mizana to someone, and it turns out to be a lie. So by what's the halacha by a maitzi shemra? Ma maitzi shemra, by a person that's maitzi shemra, he says this bad thing about his wife that's a lie. So so over there the Torah clearly says that he gets malchus mishalim, and he also has to pay a knas, a money knas of 100 coins for her. So there we see the Torah says that that's a case where you do get both punishments. Af kol loike umishalim. So too Rab Meir says from there I learn out that in a case where, like over here, Edom Zaymimin, on one hand there's the lav of Leisana, Malchus, and on the other hand there's the Kashazama, where he tended to cause the money loss and therefore he has to pay. You can give both of the punishments together. That's the source. So you don't learn out from Kedei Rishasai. Rather you learn out from Maitzi Shemra. But the Gemara asks, how could you compare Edom Zaymimin to Maitzi Shemra? Mala Maitzi Shemra sheken knas. When it comes to Maitzi Shemra, the punishment, the money payment of the husband that said this bad thing about his wife, there it's a penalty. So that's a unique chiddush of the Torah that you pay this kind of penalty. But by Edom Zaymimin, which the Gemara is asking now, is not a knas, so who says you could compare to that case? Answers the Gemara, Savala Rabbi Akiva. No, Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi Akiva's opinion. The Amar, Rabbi Akiva said, Edom Zaymimin, Knasu. As the Gemara brought before on Daf Beis, Rabbi Akiva's opinion is, Edom Zaymimin is a Knas. And therefore, we're comparing the Knas of Edom Zaymimin to the Knas of Maitzi Shemra, that you can give both Malchus and the money payment of the Knas. That's the source of Rabbi Meir. According to the simple pshat of the Gemara, it would seem like what it's saying is that this chiddush of Rabbi Meir, that you can give two punishments, is only in a case of knas, because that's our source from Maitzi Shemra, and similar also regarding Edom Zaymimin, which is a knas, a penalty. Over here you can give both punishments of malchus and the knas. But if it's a regular money payment, and you can't compare to Maitzi Shemra, over there Rabbi Meir would admit that to the opinion of the Chachamim, that you only give one punishment, and you learn that out from Kedei Rishasai. However, Taisus over here has an arichis, he proves from other Gemaras, and he says that according to Rabbi Meir, since you learn it out from the case of from Maitzi Shemra, so the pasuk of Kedei Rishasai, according to Rabbi Meir, is not bichlal applying to money. That drasha of Kedei Rishasai refers to Malchus and Misa. It says that you only give one punishment, but in what case? When there's a chiyuv of Misa, then I say that you don't give Misa and Malchus. But in a case of money and Malchus over here, according to Rabbi Meir, in any case, even if it's not a knas, even if it's just mamain, there is no source to learn out from Kedei Rishasai. We learn out from Maitzi Shemra that you can give two punishments of mammon and Malchus together. This is all one version of what Ula said to explain the opinion of Rabbi Meir. But there's another version to this, and Ula said it in something else. There are those that learned this statement that Ula said, regarding another din. The Tanya, we learned in Abraise, and this is a pasuk, the pasuk regarding a carbon pesach, that when you bring the carbon pesach, so you have the night of Pesach to eat it until the morning, but then one that leaves over from it in the morning, what do you do? Be'esh tisreifu. So you're not allowed to leave it over to past the Alisa Shachar, the morning, but if one does, then you have to burn it in fire. So what is the pasuk saying here? Bo'a kosav litin ese. achar loisese. The pasuk here is adding a esse, which is what you have to do if one was over on the lav. Loimar, to say she'ein loiken olav, that this is a lav that you do not get any malchus. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, this is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Why? Because here the Torah is saying if you were over on the lav, there's a way how to fix it. What does the Torah want you to do? That you have to burn it. And this is what's called a lav hanitik la. Say it's connected to a essa, and therefore there's no malchus. Rabbi Kiva, however, Rabbi Kiva argues and says, or the Ger said that there is here that Marsha and others say, Rabbi Yaakov, he argues, Lo yimen Hashem uzeh. This is not the reason why, when one leaves over from the Korban Pesach, he would not get malchus. Ella, the reason is, Mishum dahavale lav she'ein boi maaseh. This is a lav where there's no action involved. It's just leaving it there, and it gets left over to the morning. It's a lack of action that causes this lav. V'cholav she'ein boi maaseh ein loiken olav. The rule is a lav that there's no action involved, there's no malchus for this. That's the argument. Now over here, the Gemara says, Meklal, from this we understand that Rabbi Yehuda's Savar, that Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that lav she'ein boi maaseh loiken olav. That a lav, even without any action, you do get malchus. And therefore Rabbi Yehuda had to bring a different reason why you don't get malchus, because it's a lav hanitik la'aseh. And there's actually a nafkamina. Because if the reason you don't get malchus is because it's a lav hanitik la'aseh, if the person takes away the option of fulfilling that essa, he does something that now it's impossible to fulfill the essa, to correct that lav, then he will get malchus. But if it's a lav she'ein boi maaseh, so then, regardless, since there was no action done to be over this lav, he will never get malchus for this. So now the Gemara says, Minale. So what's the source of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that even a lav that has no maaseh, one still gets malchus? So here's Ola's statement. Omar Ola said, Gomar mi moitzi shemra. We learn it out from moitzi shemra. Ma moitzi shemra. When one speaks negatively about his wife and says she wasn't a psula and it was a lie, so this is a lav shein by maaseh. It's also a lav that a person was over, but there's no action. It's just his words. And loiken olav, and this the Torah explicitly says that there is malchus. Af kol lav she'ein by maaseh loiken olav. So too, from there is a source that any lav that there's no maaseh, you still get malchus. Just like by moitzi shemra, it says clearly v'yisroisai. So just like there's malchus. So too, we learn out for any lav that there's no maaseh. But here again, the Gemara asks, how can you compare to the case of Moitzi Shemra? Mala Moitzi Shemra, Shekain, Loiko, Mishalim. As we brought before, Moitzi Shemra we see is more stringent. There, the Torah punishes that there's two things: there's to get malchus and the fact that you have to pay. But over here, we want to compare that to every lav. And for example, the lav of Neisar by the Korban Pesach, where you don't see this stringency. How do you know that it applies here to say that you get malchus for a lav that there's no maaseh? Elam Erish Lakish, or Rish Lakish says that there's another source where we see that you get a malchus for a lav that has no maaseh. Gamar me'edim zaymimin. We learn it out from edim zaymimin. Edim zaymimin, my edim zaymimin lav shem by maaseh. It's also a lav. It's the words of the edim. There's no action like an olav. You get malchus for this. Av kol lav shem by maaseh like an olav. So to any lav where there's no maaseh, you get malchus in this. Right? And this by edim zaymimin, this everybody agrees to this. That in a case where you can't fulfill the kasha zomam, like in the first case of the Mishnah and the Masechta, over there, everybody agrees that we learn not from Vitztikus at Tzadik that by Edim Zaymimin, it's a lav, shein by Maaseh, and you still get malchus. So from there, we have a source to say that we could compare to other cases of a lav that there's no Maaseh, that you would get malchus. But again, the Gemara says from Edim Zaymimin, you can't learn out either, because there's a unique stringency that you find by Edim Zaymimin. Mal Edim Zaymimin, Shekeinein Tzrichen Asra. By the case of Edim Zaymimin, there is no warning. Even without the Edim Zaymimin getting their warning, they still get malchus for this. And actually, he brings the Gemara in Ksubis, discusses this, the source of why there's no warning and they still get malchus. And really, the idea here is by Edim Zaymimin, the whole idea is kashazama. Just like they intended to give this person a punishment that person never got a warning for because it was a lie. So too, they get the punishment of kashazama, that same einish on them, without a warning either. So this is a unique stringency that you find by Edim Zaymimin. So you can't learn out from there that you should get a malchus for a lav shem by maaseh. Says the Gemara, Moitzi Shemra Yechiyach. But I'll go back now to what Ula said, that you could prove from Moitzi Shemra that there it's a lav shem by maaseh, and you get malchus, and it's not based on a stringency that there's no asra. Over there, that stringency does not apply, and still the Torah says that it's a lav shem by maaseh, and you get malchus. Now, what we say over here is v'chazar adin. This limud to learn out from Meitzi Shemra, you cannot learn out from Meitzi Shemra alone, because there's a stringency, as the Gemara pointed out by Meitzi Shemra, that it's loike u'mishalim. You can't learn out from Eidim Zaymimin alone either, because there's a unique stringency that you get Malkus without Asra, and therefore I say loyre izeh kir izeh v'loyre izeh kir izeh. The chumrah that there is by one is not the same as the chumrah that there is by another. However, the common denominator by both of them is that it's a lav shein by maise, that both Meitzi Shemra and Eidim Zaymin is a lav that there's no action involved. The loiken olav, and you see by both of them that you get malchus. So this is the idea of a tzad hashava. If you have a source that has a unique stringency, you can't apply it to another place, because then I said it's that stringency which is the cause of the din. So I would say that the stringency is the cause of the din, that you get malchus. But over here, if I have two different cases that have different stringencies, so then I say, you can't say that it's the chumrah of the fact that loikel mishalim, which is the cause of the din, that you get malchus, because I have another case where it's not loikel mishalim, and you get malchus. You can't say that the cause of the stringency that you get malchus is because there's no asra, because I have a different case where there is asra, you don't have that stringency, and you still get malchus. So you can't compare them. So this is not the cause of the stringency. Elamai, it's the tzad, hashava, that this is a lav, she'ein by maise, and you get malchus. From both together, I learn out af kol lav she'ein by maise. Anytime you have a lav and there's no action involved, like an olav, there's malchus in this. But the Gemara asks, even if you're learning from both together, from Meitzi Shemra and from Eidim Zaymimin, ma la tzad hashaviv sheben sheken knas. Both Meitzi Shemra and Eidim Zaymimin is a knas. So maybe there's a unique stringency because they're knas, and therefore they get malchus for a lav she'ein by maise. How could you compare it to any other lav? And says the Gemara, Holei Kasher, this is not a question, because Rabbi Yehuda lo yisava lo karab akiva. Rabbi Yehuda that says that you get malchus and a lav she'ein by maise, and he learns it out from this tzad hashava from Meitzi Shemra and Eidim Zaymimin together, does not agree to Rabbi Akiva's opinion that it's a knas. Rather, he holds that the payment by Eidim Zaymimin of kashazamim is considered to be a money payment. So Elo, the Gemara says, but I would still ask you, Malat tzad hashava shebehen sheken yesh behem tzad chomer. Yes, you have a tzad hashava. You have two sources to teach that you get a malchus for lav she'ein by maise, but in both of these cases there is a certain stringency, even though they're not the same. But I can say that the stringency in both of these cases is still the cause of the fact that there's this din that you get a malchus for lav she'ein by maise. So how could you learn out to a regular lav that doesn't have a tzad chomer, that doesn't have any of the stringency? But the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda tzad chomer loy parich. Rabbi Yehuda holds that this is not a pircha on this kind of a limud. You can't say, oh, they both have a stringency, but it's not the same stringency. As long as it's not the same chumrah, so then I can't compare and say that this chumrah or that chumrah is the source of the din. Adarabah, it proves that there has to be another reason, which is the din, and that is the very fact that it's a lav she'ein by maise, that you get malchus, and I can learn out from there to any other lav that even if there's no action, you still get malchus. That's the source of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Okay, but now the Gemara comes back and asks v'Rabbanan. According to the Rabbanan's opinion, the Rabbanan hold that on a lav she'ein by maise, you do not get malchus. So according to the Rabbanan, Hai laisane b'reyacha eit shoke my darshi bei. What did the Rabbanan learn out from the pasuk of laisane b'reyacha eit shoke? Since according to the Rabbanan's opinion, you do not get malchus on a lav she'ein by maise. So what do they do with this pasuk? Answers the Gemara, they learn out from this pasuk, Las Hara Eidim Zaymimin. This is the pasuk which is the source, the warning, the lav for Eidim Zaymimin. We know the einish of Eidim Zaymimin, Kashazamam, or V'tzdikus Atzadik. We know the einish, but in order to have the einish, you always also have to have the warning in the Torah. Leisana is the Azhara, the warning. But Rab Meir's opinion is, Azhara le'edim zaymimin minole. What is his source for the warning for edim zaymimin? If, according to his opinion, leisana beracha eit shaker is the actual einish of malchus that you give for a lav she'ein by maisa. So where is the source of the warning according to Rab Meir? Rab Yirmiyah, so Rab Yirmiyah says, Nafkele, Rab Meir learns it out, Mi v'hanisharim yishmu v'yirov v'lo yisifu v'ayit. In the pasuk by Eidim Zaymimin, it goes on to say that those that are there, that see what happens to these Eidim Zaymimin, they should hear and they should be afraid. Yishmu v'yirov v'lo, they should not do this. So this is the warning that they should see, and to warn v'lo yisifu. The word lo yisifu means that no one else should do similar to this. The Rabbanan, according to the Rabbanan, that have already a source of a warning from Losana, what do they learn out from the words of V'lo Yisifu? Haomi Baile Lachras. This pasuk that it says by Adam Zayman is coming to say a different point. That after the Bezdin gives the Einish of Kashazamim to the Adam Zayman, so now here the Bezdin, or this is really that Rashi brings from the Gemara, we learned in Sanhedrin, that when Bezdin gives the punishment of Mrs. Bezdin, then Bezdin has to announce for others to hear the einish that was done for this person, that so and so was killed in this and this Bezdin, so other people should hear what happened and should be afraid not to be over. That's what they learn from this pasuk. But Rav Meir will tell you, Hachraze miyishmu v'yiron nafke. You learn this idea, that Bezdin announces this from the first part of the pasuk, where it says that those are there that have to hear and be afraid. V'lo yisifu. The end of the pasuk is still there extra to learn out the warning for the Adam Zayman that they should get the punishment by Adam Zayman.